Today on the Dig podcast, we're speaking to Aislings Bremner, who is a branding and marketing specialist, and you are going to be blown away by her knowledge. Sometimes in business, you can lose your way about who you are, why you do what you do you have a brand at all? Listening to Aislings, you'll be able to pinpoint just exactly where you fall on that scale, and maybe realise that there are things you can do yourself with limited budget to change things around, to grow your brand, to position yourself in a place where you get noticed for the things you do. I know you're going to love this podcast. I can't wait for you to tune in. Welcome to the Dig podcast. I am your host, Caroline O'Neill, and I love to discuss all things online marketing, managing money, collaborations, making that killer pitch and developing that product that will make millions, as well as so many other topics that will inspire you in your business. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Dig podcast. It's my absolute privilege to speak to thousands of you each week. Remember, I love to know when you've listened, so screenshot the episode and post on social, tagging me on Dig for Success and Dig Mama, and I will reshare with my audience. I'd also love if you could leave a review for the Dig podcast on whatever your favourite platform is, Apple, Spotify or YouTube. I love to see all your reviews. Welcome to the podcast, Aislings.
Thank you for having me, Caroline.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. And you know, whenever I think about the things that businesses need to know, when you agreed, I was like, oh my God, people are just they need this information so much. And I always say sometimes you don't know till you know, and you're the one that can talk to us about it today. So I know I gave you a wee bit of an introduction there, but those are just my words. So can you tell us a wee bit about your background and how you came to be doing what you do today?
Well, look, I've been working with brands for over 20 years now, so I'm showing my age. But I've always, I suppose I did a degree in marketing. It's a degree called Communications, Advertising and Marketing in Jordanstown. A lot of people know it as CAM. And it was really within that time that I could have went into lots of different areas of marketing, but I worked for Coca-Cola when I was at university. And to be honest, that's when I got the passion for brands, because I could see that this liquid that was literally just a liquid was this mega global brand, and the love that people had for it. And I was like, what is this? Or how do you do this? Or how do you create this? And it was that magic and that palpable kind of feeling that everybody had, whether you were in Ireland or whether you're in America, that this brand created. And I thought, like, that's what I want to do. I want to get into that and I want to be involved with brands. Then I went and worked for Heinz in London for a few years, and I've worked then in the drinks industry for a whiskey brand in Scotland. I then worked for the C&C group in Ireland, great brands like Magners, Coors Light. I created the whole Tenants Vital proposition, and each one of those, if I connect the dots of my career, brands are absolutely at the heart of it, and that's what I do best, is both creating, but mostly actually rejuvenating brands that have got a wee bit tired, and just helping people define what they're all about. So I've both worked in companies and for companies doing that.
And when you're talking about all that and you're talking about Coca-Cola, like that makes it real to me what a brand is, because it absolutely is the epitome of it, really, because it's recognisable all over the world. Mm-hmm. But bringing it back to probably smaller businesses, what is a brand? What is the definition of a brand?
Yeah, look, I think if you Google this, you would get 1,000 different answers, to be honest. And I think that's why people don't fully feel confident talking about their brand and what brands are. I try to keep things relatively simple. To me, what a brand is there's three elements to it. One, and I think if you can hold the vision in your head of an iceberg, okay, so think about the tip of an iceberg is above the water line, okay, and then you've got a huge kind of, anchor of the iceberg below. So the bit that's kind of below the surface is all the kind of inside stuff. So that's who the brand is. If you think about a person, it's their values, it's kind of what they're all about. It's their personality. It's just their core essence and their heartbeat. But nobody really focuses on that, particularly at a small business level. What they focus on is the above the water, the tip of the iceberg. They focus on the identity. So they focus on the logo predominantly, and that is just not what a brand is. It is a logo, it's a mark. That is it. So you've got the one is the inside, and it's the kind of brand DNA. Then you've got the outside, which is the brand identity. And then you've got the third bit, which is the kind of bringing that brand to life. So for me, a brand is one, the kind of DNA, two, image, and three, really perceptions, what consumers think about you. And Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, he refers to it as, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so if you think about what do you want people to say about you, that starts to help you figure out what your brand is.
It's so true. Whenever I speak to businesses too, sometimes they lost their way, especially with social content. They're like, why am I actually posting this? And I suppose it's because they maybe haven't thought about what their values are and what they stand for and what they believe in. And some businesses might think that's not relevant to me, but it is absolutely relevant to every single business.
It's relevant to every business. It's relevant to every person. Even if if you think about a personal brand, it's absolutely relevant, because otherwise if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know kind of what to say yes to and what to say no to. So for me, it's a fundamental, and it's something you can do. You don't have to necessarily hire a brand consultant like me. You can think about it yourself if you understand the process. But if you kind of know who your tribe are, who are your kind of audience that you want to serve, what matters to them, what value do you bring as a business? How do you walk? How do you talk? Once you figure out all of that, the things like social media become a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Because you kind of instinctively know, this is my tone of voice, this is the types of things that I talk about, this is the types of things that I can add value to, and these are things that I don't. Because otherwise then you have no authenticity. You are kind of all things to all people, and that is just vanilla, that's just bland, and you don't stand out. So for me, really just taking the time to figure out who you are, and what you stand for is really important for all the other stuff like social media or advertising, or even your kind of product or service.
And I keep bringing it back to businesses, but then when I think of the other side of the work that I do, as well as the other people that I work with, like influencer marketing, that's very clear for their personal brand.
Absolutely.
Because you actually can turn into a person that is trying to be all things to everyone, and then, like you say, you don't stand out and you don't have impact. So that's so true for businesses.
Yeah, I think, and that whole world of kind of personal brand and creators is now, so important. So for me, it's exactly the same principles. It's not a fancy new term. It's the same fundamentals as what you do with a product brand or a service brand. So a personal brand is exactly the same. But I think it's even more important. If you want to connect with an audience, you need to know who your audience is, and think about the value that you can add to them. And then don't be chasing shiny objects. Just focus, just prioritize the kind of, I do this, and this really well, but I'm not going to try and do all these other things. I'm going to leave that to somebody else. And then people are saying, well, there's consistency there, there's authenticity. So that's where the trust comes, and that's where the real value comes.
And I actually have a story during lockdown. And TikTok has taken off, and TikTok was the thing during lockdown where people were, trying to do the TikTok videos, and those who were really good and it was their audience and their thing excelled. And I because I always like to try new things. TikTok is not for me, and I was trying to be the person that I thought I needed to be at that time, but it wasn't. It's so not me, and I can hold my hands up. I just went flop, and I'll never be me. But I absolutely appreciate it's a perfect platform for some people. But it brought me back to, why am I doing it? This is not my people or what they want to see either.
But you see what you talked about there, that instinct of like being true to yourself, that is at the heart of good branding. So if you never want to dress up and be somebody else, you'll be found out.
Yes.
So it's kind of every piece of a good brand purpose or brand proposition comes from something that's true anyway, and all you're doing is you're shining a light on that. Some people don't see it. Some people can't see the golden nuggets until you point them out. And all you're doing is wrapping that up and kind of saying, that's what you're really good at. Forget about all that other stuff. This is who you are. So keep with that.
Yeah, I think there's so many people listening who maybe that'll focus them a wee bit more. But what do you need to think about when creating a brand name? That's what I've written down here. So can you shine any light on that? A brand name?
Yeah, so people get really hung up on this. This is what people could spend like days and weeks and months and agonising on their brand name. And what I would say to somebody that is creating a new brand at the minute is, don't stress on that, okay? You think about some of the brands that are out there today, like think about Tesla, think about Amazon, think about IKEA. What do those names mean? It's the meaning that you layer into it over time that is the important bit. So pick a name. Yeah, if you can pick one that kind of feels right and feels that it kind of embodies what your service or your product is, great. But I would do a few key things first. So maybe start with doing a bit of a mind map and think about all the things that kind of, you think of, will come to mind when you think about your product or service. The next most important thing is check the URL availability. So look to see, can you get a website that is in and around that name? Okay, so if you can't, there's no point. You need a website. So I would check that first. So go on to GoDaddy and just, and ideally you want a .com or a .co.uk. So, most of the others aren't really of great value. The next thing you want to do is check social handle availability. So can you get the social handles? So you're thinking about that before you've decided. So you might have a short list of 10 and now you're checking to see, can you actually bring it right through? And the final thing, and this is for people that, genuinely want to go, particularly if it's an e-commerce brand or if it's a brand that you kind of potentially want to really grow, look at trademark availability, and you can do that for free online on the government website. So, check to see if there's somebody in your class, because the last thing you want to do, and even if you're a small business, what you don't want to do is put all this effort into developing a brand, and then 2 years down the line, you get this little solicitor's letter, which is saying, cease and desist, you have to stop using this. And even the money that you might have to take to fight that. So think about those practical things. Mm. So the brand name, to be honest, is not the most important thing. Think about it, obviously, and if you're focused predominantly on digital, you might want a keyword in your URL. I don't think that is, if you want to be more than just one product in one category, that's really hard. So I wouldn't be hung up on that. But if you want a portfolio of products under a brand, that's not as relevant. But if you are only going to be a candle brand, for example, you might want that in your URL as well. So just think about those practical things. Mm. But don't stress too much about the name, because you'll build the meaning behind that over time. Mm-hmm. So just think about the biggest brands in the world. What do they actually mean? Mm-hmm. Mean anything?
Funny, because Dig happened actually. So I decided, for anyone who doesn't know, I used to have a retail store, and obviously, like, what are we going to call it? What are we going to call it? Like, we were obsessed with what we were going to call it, and it was in the.
You're down a rabbit hole, and you can't stop thinking about it.
God, it was ridiculous. The suggestions and I was getting so stressed out. But and the other shops in town were called Red. There was Red, Tom Morrow's Red, and Cuba. And I was thinking, well, they're a country and they're a colour, and I remember thinking all of those things, but. Then we did, without me realising what you just said, stripped it back to our way and our. So my daddy helped me start my shop because I was very young and didn't have finances or support or anything, and he drives a digger. And I said I'd love to name it something that shows my gratefulness to him, and he's my mentor and he's my everything, and and it was actually my friend Brona said, just call it Dig, and I was like, wow, what a cool. She's like, stick another G on, make it different, and let's call it Dig. And when you're talking about everything, like, Dig has now
the meaning has been built in.
I will never let that Dig go, because it means so much, and it's now grew into all these other things.
But you think that's another good example with Dig, so you've built all the meaning behind it, and it's great that comes from really truthful foundations. But I think as well, you think about kind of the different sub-brands. So I always think about a master brand. So Dig is your master brand, and now you've got your sub-brands, okay? And you have to think about, well, if I want to create other strands to this, does that name allow me to do that in time? So again, just think long term about what it is that you're trying to achieve, and think about the flexibility of that name or that mark to kind of grow with your ambitions over time.
I actually obviously didn't think of any of that at the time. I was just like, we've got a name. But it turns out I've been able to do that now. But I suppose if you are struggling, like you said, bring it back to, if you're doing like a wee exercise, your why, your how, and something might pop up.
Yeah, I always think if you're stuck creatively on anything, get a piece of paper and a pen out and literally just start writing. Just start writing, because something, and then you might leave it and you might come back and you go, there's something there, But if you stress yourself and say, I need a name and it needs to be like unbelievable, you're absolutely not going to find it, So just relax about that whole bit of it.
Good. Hope that's put some people at ease. And then, once you've got your name, it's important to know, like, I know you've discussed before the podcast different things, but like your niche and your customer, what they want and all. So talk to us a wee bit more about that, because sometimes people they just know what they want to do, but what is their customer?
You absolutely need to think about your, I think every business and every brand has to be customer first, customer centric. So you need to know who it is that you can add value to, okay? And don't try to be all things. I keep repeating this, but it's so important. Don't try to be all things to all people. So don't kind of say, well, my audience is absolutely everybody out there that will come through my door, or absolutely everybody who potentially would. That's not going to make you stand out. So you need to think about, okay, so if, for example, I'll use the candle example again. So if you have a candle brand, okay, and you basically are saying to yourself, right, well, everybody wants a candle, so that's good, I'm going to go after them all. No, because there's too many candles out there. So you want to kind of take it down and say, well, no, this is for so people that are, are pregnant, for example. Okay, so they're pregnant and they want to have a very kind of soothing experience, and the kind of things within that are kind of specifically for them. And then you kind of hone it down, and everything is about them, and that's about that community, and you really, really get to know them. And actually, you're kind of like, well, what else is this community like? What else can I bring to them that's not just candles? So I just think, know your niche, know what their values are, and they have to be aligned to yours, and then just really, really kind of hone in on that and stay true to that, and just forget about everybody else. And just own that space. So I do think really knowing where they hang out, what they're interested in, what their problems are, is a really good place to start, because obviously that'll give you loads of business ideas as well in terms of for the future. So I do think start there before you've even created the names and all of that. That's a really important place to start. Really know your audience.
And even doing that exercise before you've got your name would help you with your name.
Of course it would, because then you might want to test it with them and stuff like that. So really focus in, and there's simple one-pagers that you can get online, or I can share links with you, Caroline, as well, which is just an exercise. And I always tried, when I'm kind of creating a brand, I have literally a person in my mind, and that person is living and breathing. And I stick it on a wall, and I always go back to that. What would they want? What would they want? Would this be with the kind of stuff that they would want to see? And sometimes that just brings you back to what you're all about. So, okay, you might have 2 or 3 of those, that's fine, but just kind of understand how to segment those.
So whenever there's businesses in front of you, sometimes they're like, well, like you said, but I have loads of different customers, but you can have that customer persona for different profile, like different types, and keep bringing it back to each one.
And you'll have different, and then even in terms of like when you're starting to think about the services or the kind of content that you might want to, each one of those might have their own content plan. So if you think about, right, well, they're interested in this, so I'm going to, but obviously they all have to kind of align, and then maybe there's a shared value among them all, but you can kind of give them value in different ways. So just really taking the time to kind of define that is really important. It'll set you up for everything that you do, to be honest.
Some people think this is mumbo jumbo, because I have spoken to businesses and they're like, I don't need to sit down and write down who they are and what they like and what they do. And I'm like, but if you did, imagine if you knew that, say it was the pregnancy, you could create content all that week and social around the different things that would help someone relax in pregnancy, not just your candle. It gives you such scope, doesn't it?
It gives you such scope. And, even if you're thinking about what blog, I'm thinking about, right, so, I focus on brands, but right through to the brand communication piece and the whole storytelling. If you know them, it's so much easier. If you know what is of value to them, what blog content that you do, what kind of social posts that you do, all of that is much, you're not starting from scratch every time, and I think that sometimes, that little bit of time, you could do that in, kind of an hour, that's there then, so it saves you time, and it gives you kind of a bit of parameters, and kind of keeps bringing you back to center if you kind of get a wee bit unfocused. So I do think it's a simple exercise, but it's one that's worth doing. And even if once you're kind of thinking about, influencers to align with, or you're thinking about advertising, Facebook advertising, you need to know that.
You do. You
need to know kind of who your audience is, what they're interested in, all of that, to not waste your money.
Yeah.
To really hone in, so it's very valuable.
And we're kind of talking through the questions that I'm coming to, but explain the brand building process. So you have your name, you know your customer. How do we build it, Aisling?
Yeah.
I know that's the $1 million question, but...
Yeah, look, I think, as I mentioned, there's 3 steps. So and what happens is most people jump to the logo bit. So I would just kind of take it right back, okay, and just think to yourself. And again, this is an exercise that you could do by yourself. It's difficult to do by yourself because you can't really see the wood for the trees when you're in the business. So either get people that you trust to kind of go through the exercises with you, or work with somebody like myself, to kind of help you define who you are. So really, I would you'll start with some of the functional stuff. So, what do we offer, and what kind of value do we offer? And, to your customer, and you kind of have a proposition. It's either a service or it's a product, or you're a personal brand. And basically, you're kind of defining all the features and benefits of that. And then you need to kind of take it up a notch and say, right, well, okay, so what is my personality? What are my values? And the reason that's really important is that, again, it's a bit of a, a checklist for what will I do and what will I not do. Okay, so as a person, you have personal values. Okay, there's things that you absolutely will not do, and there's certain ways that you will never speak. And as a brand, you need to know that as well, because otherwise, if you don't know that, you don't have authenticity. You're just kind of you change how you act from one person to another. So having those embedded. So my values is that is one of family, or it's integrity, or it's honesty, and those things run right through your business then. Because you check yourself and you say, is this me being true to myself? And then there's a process. There's many different brand building processes. A good one for probably your audience to kind of have a think about is there's a guy called Simon Sinek. I don't know if you know about him, but Google him. He did a very famous TED talk. And it's all about the golden circles, okay? And what this is all about is about kind of like reversing the way people do things. People mostly start with, okay, I have a product, right? And I'm now gonna sell it, okay? So this is what I do, and then they'll think about this is how I do it. So I do it in my own style, and I have personality, or I kind of bring it to market in a certain way. Most people don't think about why they do it. So you need to reverse the whole process. So start with the why. Okay, so think if you're a brand out there, or if you're a service business, why do I do what I do? Why do I exist? Okay, and once you kind of establish that, because why do I exist? Everything kind of comes then, kind of bubbles up from that. So it's not about I don't exist to make money, and that's an output of what you do. It's not why you exist. So if you think about somebody like. Use the example of, like, say, Nike. Their kind of why is they're about kind of inspiring everyday athletes, and basically their kind of philosophy is if you have a body, you are an athlete. So everything that they do bubbles up from that. Okay, so they're not just about selling trainers. Yes, they will do that. That's the what they do. But it's about kind of it's a whole kind of mindset, and it's a whole kind of culture that runs right through the marketing communications. So, for example, you Caroline, for example, if we were thinking about what is the Diggs why, I don't know what it is, and we'd have to work through that. But it could be, for example, Dig exists to.
Make a difference.
To make a difference, yeah.
Kind of what I keep coming back to. Is this actually going to make a difference to me or anyone else? Then I'm not doing it, or I am doing it. Yeah. It's kind of what I always say to myself.
That's exactly it. And you could add a bit more in a kind of why thing. You could add a bit more to that. You could kind of say that, my mission, my purpose is, and the reason why I exist is to bring, laughter. It's to bring empowerment. It's to kind of encourage people to do good. It's to, there could be layers to that. And then that would kind of give you 4 key pillars of your brand. And you would say, right, well, that's what I do. I don't do other things. And there could be loads of material within that. So that's a long answer, but if you get the why first, then the how you do it is, that's getting a bit more practical. And then the what you do is your, so for example, with yourself, it's a podcast, or it could be training, or it could be charity work, or it could be whatever. It all ladders up from that. And it all feels easier when you know the foundations. Yes. Okay. So what I would do with all that is kind of bring it all together and kind of, create a bit of a kind of just 1 or 2 pager, and it's basically you on a page. And then you know who you are. You've kind of got your like keep referring back to, and then what the next step in the process is bringing that to life. So kind of the look and feel. So again, think about the inside and the outside. So you've done the inside, so I now know who I am, and I now know kind of how I behave, and what's important to me. And then you would say, right now I need to have an outer look and feel that feels aligned to that. So again, if you start only with the identity, there's no substance behind it, So again, then you would say, right, how, you talk to a designer, or you would create an identity that brings that to life. But it's also then your tone of voice. It's how you speak. So it's, all of that's so important. If you think about brands like Innocent, or you think about Brewdog, they talk in a very consistent way, and there's a real personality, which makes them stand out, and that's part of their brand, And then the next stage of that then is really just rolling that out. It's the brand communications, it's the social media, it's the, it's your website, it's your, all of that, all of your products, all of that. So kind of start from the bottom and layer up.
The Dig podcast is all about educating my listeners, but it's so important to me that it is also a place to gain exposure. Each week, we open up the podcast to brands and business owners to pitch to you guys.
My name is Louise Conn, business owner of Benone Getaways. I am delighted to sponsor Series 4 of the Dig podcast and be featured as one of Caroline's guests. Benone Getaways is a luxury resort based on the Causeway Coast, walking distance from Benone Beach. It has spectacular views of Benevena Mountain and the hills of Donegal. We are open all year round for that perfect beachside escape. The resort consists of 6 unique luxury glamping pods and 2 self-catering holiday homes. 4 of our pods come in their very own private hot tubs. All of our pods have personal fire pits and our guests can enjoy the amazing chill and grill barbecue hut. Take advantage of getting the family together or even a group of friends and book an unforgettable stay. Our resort is in the heart of Benone, close to an amazing activity centre, mini golf, surf school, walking distance from a bar and restaurant. Benone Getaways is a great base for exploring the north coast and visiting the top tourist attractions such as Mussenden Temple, Giant's Causeway and many more. Just an hour's drive from us is both Belfast and Derry/Londonderry, and we are only 5 minutes away from the Lochfoyle Ferry, the gateway to Inishowen. After a long hard day exploring, pop open a Prosecco and gather round the fire pit, or soak in your very own private hot tub. Benone Getaways can cater for all occasions, including birthdays, anniversaries, hen parties and many more. Get in touch and create your very own tailor-made experience, which can make memories that last a lifetime. Start your giant adventure at Benone Getaways. Find us on all the socials at Benone Getaways or on our website www.benonegetaways.co.uk.
A lot for people to think about, and I think sometimes people think, oh, I need to have a voice, but actually some of those brands you're talking about, there isn't one specific person speaking, but you always know their brand what their messaging is. So there is a way for people that feel like, oh, I'm never going to be able to put a voice to my brand. You can still have strong brand identity without that actual spoken word.
Yeah, not even spoken. Tone of voice is different. Tone of voice is kind of how you speak. So tone of voice might be that, you kind of are a little bit chatty, or, if you're a solicitor, you might be professional, but kind of, plain speaking. And, it's kind of, we speak like this, we don't speak like that. We don't have judgment. We are, we have the crack. There's different things for different brands. But
I suppose I'm thinking online.
You're thinking about a personal brand, basically.
I'm thinking of, say, a retailer, and everyone's online now talking about their product, but some businesses struggle to put themselves in front of the camera, and then they feel like they're actually not, they don't have a strong tone of voice because they're not speaking. But what I'm trying to say is they can actually create a tone of voice for their brand and everything that they do.
Everything that they do.
Being vocal.
No, and that's obviously a more recent thing that people are getting in front of the cameras. But if you think about a lot of, bigger brands, the owners and the founders are not in front of the camera. No, but they live and breathe. Like every person who interacts with that brand gets the same experience. So you can bring it through in your packaging, in your signage, how you respond to emails, how you answer the phone. It's every single touch point.
That's so true.
It's, the social media might be the end of the line, but for most people, that's not there. And so, but it might be. So, for example, somebody that is a solicitor might be up speaking at an event. Again, they've got to embody that brand. They can't go off rogue and act differently than the core principles of that business. So I think for me, it's just about, the one thing I would say is about consistency. Know who you are and then apply that consistently,
So I had a person on the podcast. His name was Jeremy McSweeney, and he owns Gym Plus Coffee. I don't know if you've ever met him, but when you're talking, I think of them.
Yeah,
because
I love that brand.
I think they've done that so well.
They really have, and he's a marketeer that created that brand, so he kind of he gets it. He knows what he's on about. But they did more, so they could have just been a kind of athleisure wear brand, and that's it. But what they first of all really, really knew their audience. They knew what mattered to them, and they kind of saw that gap. And there were people like them, so it comes from a very powerful place. And they've created the community, and that's where the power is the kind of, they figure out the things that matter to that community, and they've brought them physically into it, as well as, for a direct to consumer brand like them online, they've really created a very live community experience. So I love what they're doing.
Me
Absolutely
too.
love
So
it.
anyone that doesn't follow,
Yeah.
maybe even just go to watch to see what they do. You know, they're just not all about the selling, and I think that makes their brand stronger, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. They're creating experiences
They
all the
really
time and
are.
really adding value. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Positioning and differentiation. Oh my goodness, I have that written down. But how can you stand out and be known for something? I guess we've covered elements of it there, but can you delve a wee bit into that? Like standing out and being known for something. Small businesses sometimes struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I just want to sell the clothes. I just want to do the hair. I just want to. But how do you do that, Aisling?
And that's so, this is not for everybody. I would say that, if you're happy kind of just to kind of, be the same as everybody else and are very comfortable in that space, that's okay.
Most people listening to this want to.
But that's what I think.
Yes.
I think your audience basically are trying to say, how can I be great at what I do, know, and how can I stand for it? And really what positioning is kind of saying, right, whenever somebody thinks of my brand, what do I want them to think? Okay, so if you think about, let's say it's hairdressers, there's a lot of similar features. So they're all going to do 90% of the same stuff, okay? So in a marketing speak, you would say that they're basically all Me Too brands. They're interchangeable. You could go to the one to the other, and you're getting the same experience, okay? And that's very much a commodity type market. There's no real value in that. It's fine if you want to just tick along, okay? But if you want to do great things, and if you want to take your brand and extend it and have multiple shops, for example, or if you wanted to go into hair care, and sell that, you need to be something more, okay? So how I would, again, just thinking about people get very stuck in the kind of copying other brands and other businesses, right? And you're not really going to kind of change the world when you do that. So an exercise I would encourage, in fact, a book I would really encourage people to read is Blue Ocean Strategy. It is just, it's a 20-year-old book, but honestly, the value that is in that for anybody, whether it's a personal brand, a service, a product brand, is phenomenal. And what it talks about is that almost 90% of businesses operate in the red ocean. So they're all the same. And they're all fighting for each other's lunch, and they're basically stealing from each other. The pie's not getting bigger, and they're stealing, and they're basically all versions of the same. Or when they look at competitor, analysis, they'll look at what others are doing. Okay, so all that you're doing is, robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's you're bringing nothing new to the party. What Blue Ocean says, I'll try and just keep it as simplistic as possible, but what Blue Ocean talks about is kind of looking beyond your kind of sector and thinking, what value can I bring? What new things can I bring? Okay, and then there's so much potential for you in that, because you're standing out, number one, you're adding value, you're probably bringing new customers into the sector. So the kind of simple way to go about that is to kind of look at, right, what are all the features, okay? And if you plot yourself right now versus your, 3 or 4 main competitors, and you find that you've all got the same line in terms of you've got high and you've got low on one axis, and you've got all the features. It could be price, it could be the delivery mechanism, it could be the services that you offer, it could be, your social media presence, whatever it might be. Plot all the features along the bottom. And if you'll probably see that you're very similar. So the lines will be, like, all the competitors will be the same. Okay, so that means that you're not distinct. You're not standing out for anything. So what you're then trying to do is saying, well, what could I stand out for? What features could I offer to kind of create a gap? So you want to stand out for 2 or 3 things that your competitors don't. And the best way to kind of come up with those ideas is look outside your sector. So look at so if you work in the hairdressing industry, for example, if we're using that, look at the skincare industry, look at what the makeup industry is doing, what features are they doing that you could bring into that, and what you're trying to do is to stand out for something. Bring something new into the market and stand out. And it could be because of your personality. It could be the personality or the personal brand that you bring. It could be anything. So I would encourage people just to Google that book, have a look at it. But positioning is basically about trying to create a bit of blue water from you and the competition, and to focus in and stand for something. Okay, don't try to be all things to all people. I think I've said that 3 times now.
I know, but it's true.
But it really is. People, I think it's a lack of confidence that people kind of say, well, I'll just do all those things. And
it stops your growth.
It stops your growth, and it's shiny object. It's shiny object syndrome as well. People are kind of going, well, I'll just do that, and I'll just do that, and just do that. But what you do is you really dilute what it is. So trust in the fact that if you do 2 or 3 things and become famous for them, that's enough. There'll be enough people out there who will want that. Rather than trying to get a little small bit of everybody. So that's really what positioning is about, is owning a place in the consumer's mind that they're just going to get it. That's what they are. That's what they do.
I actually had a chat with somebody yesterday who's positioned themselves very high in their sector, and then they have, what do you call it, the red ocean people coming and positioning themselves beside them and copying them. But I said to this person, you are that person that will always aim to position yourself higher. So you're going to leave them behind and you're going to move on. They'll always try to catch up, but if you have that kind of mindset, you'll always push forward. Isn't that right? There'll always be the people that want to imitate, but you'll always be the person to rise.
And you know, if you don't focus your attention on your competitors. You know, focus your attention on yourself and what value you can add to your customers. Because if you're focused over there, you're not focused on your customers.
Yes.
You know, so think about the value that you can bring to them, you know, and think about, there's a lot of things in some sectors that you could just, you know, again, the blue ocean strategy principles are, what can you get rid of? What does not really add value? What can you bring in that's new? You know, so there's a way of reducing your costs and then adding more value in, you know, the things that really matter.
Cost with money and like once you said, I know people are listening going, well, I can't afford somebody to help me with this. Like, how do you brand build as a small business with no money?
I know. And look, we've all been there. You know, I'm a kind of a self-employed person as well. I totally get that. I do think there's great resources out there in terms of just online, in terms of educating you on some of this stuff. I hope to do some kind of workshops and stuff, because I do think that it's not necessarily, nothing that I will help somebody with is new. It's all there. It's all in you, in the person, in their customers. Sometimes you can't kind of get the headspace to do it. So actually just a guided kind of workshop to kind of give people the dedicated time to work through it. But I'll be putting some links up with you, Caroline, of some simple templates with some simple kind of guidelines on how somebody can kind of complete the process themselves. And then there's just so many tools these days for creating logos. You know, Canva is absolutely brilliant for kind of, you know, uploading your fonts. You've created your logo, you get your fonts and you get your kind of your color palette, and then you can create consistent templates. So again, that just means that kind of look and feel is always consistent. So there is tools, and obviously we think about Invest in I and the local councils and things like Women in Business. There is webinars and there's kind of tools there that can help you. And podcasts, absolutely, that can help you with this process, that can educate you, you know. And don't be afraid of it, you know, and don't think it doesn't have to be an expensive process, you know. Sometimes I obviously work with bigger companies as well, and you know what they might want to do is to make sure that we talk to a lot of their customers and kind of really research the market and help from that foundational piece. I do a lot of workshops then with the whole team, and you know, again, that's not always necessary, you know, so I do think you can kind of scale it up and down, but I would not let money, like you can do this at no cost apart from your time, if you put the effort in, and you have the interest in doing it.
And if people are listening and they've been established for a while and they've been in business and they have a logo, but they're like, is it too late for them to develop a brand now? Like they're thinking, oh God, do I start from scratch? Like, what advice would you give to somebody like that?
No, look, I've done that loads of times with businesses. Either
rebranding,
rebranding, and like they've maybe been like I did it with Dale Farm in the last year, and they hadn't rebranded in 50 years, you know, and didn't really see
50 years.
50 years, yeah. So
wow.
But you know, like their view was, it was not broke, don't fix it. But again, there was no structure, there was no meaning behind it. There was no foundations for all of the brand communications. It was kind of being reinvented every year, so that doesn't feel really authentic, you know. So again, a brand can do it at any time. In fact, you know, if you have established, you didn't think you were a brand, all of a sudden you've created this brand and you didn't know it. Sometimes going back and putting a few parameters around that is good, because you've actually tested it live in the market, and the market and your customers and the feedback that you've got is kind of telling you who you are. What you just need to do is listen. And that's kind of telling you what your brand proposition is, you know. So it's never too late, you know. Do it at the start, do it, and if you're, you know, if you kind of wear the blue ocean, you're now in the red ocean, and you need to reimagine yourself, you know, do that. Sometimes the brand just needs jolted back into people's consciousness, you know. You want to be top of mind, and sometimes brands just become invisible, you know.
This might make that jolt happen. I think people are going to be listening and be like, oh my God, she's talking about me. But it happens naturally in business. Sometimes you get lost in your way. You're so consumed by the everyday running of it, you forget who you are, and that's just normal. But thank God for people like you, and you know, for online learning, and people can actually do this on a low budget. So everybody's going to be wondering, how do we get Aisling in our lives? So can you tell me how do people get in touch with you now, Aisling? You know, how can they reach out and where you're hanging out at?
Yeah, so if they come, and I like everybody else, I'm not giving time to these things myself. Like, the last person that I want to market is myself, as I have no time, because I'm busy working, so I feel everybody's pain. But like, I have a website, to come on there and it'll find out how you can kind of book some time with me, even if it's an initial chat. Book in for a conversation to see where you're at and how I could help. I'll also be kind of offering, like, 1 hour brand kind of power hours, or marketing power hours, and that basically is just I just need a bit of wood from the trees. I kind of think I know what I'm at, but I want your help, or to guide me through this bit of the process. And that can be very effective, because even just that kind of really focused 1 hour that both of you are given to solve this problem can be very powerful. And then, for a bigger project, again, kind of contact me via social or
You're on
via
LinkedIn a lot, aren't you?
on LinkedIn, yeah. And my website is aislingbremnermarketing.com. And let's just have a chat and see where you're at, and some of it I can just point you some resources that I have, or some of it we might do the power hour, or it might be a bigger project that we kind of need to scope out and work on together. So look, I'm really passionate about making this kind of easy for people, and people, first of all, to get the value of it. There's so many great potential brands out there that just need a bit of kind of structure around it and a few foundations to kind of steady the ship, and even just sometimes shining a light on the opportunities to extend that brand. It can be very powerful. And I'm very much a kind of commercial person at heart, so I'm always thinking about how can it actually grow your business. So this isn't fluffy. This is about adding value. When you build a brand, you can charge more. You're going to have your customers for a lot longer, so there's real tangible value to be had.
Which is what we are all...
Absolutely. That's what it all boils... It absolutely is what it boils down to, yeah.
Oh my God, that was so... I could talk to you all day. Like, there was loads of things. I was like, oh, I'd love to know more. But anyway, we're going to follow you online now. And I know your workshops are going to be so valuable for businesses. Thank you so much for being on the Dig podcast. And yeah, I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Remember, if you do listen to an episode, screenshot it and share it on social. Remember to tag me so that I see it and I can reshare on my platform. I love to see everyone tuning in each week. It has been an honour to be your host. I look forward to our next episode.